Hey, what's going on, guys? It's me, Train Man, and welcome back to the Zombie Train, episode 188. 188. And once again, we're 10 episodes behind the questions, which isn't bad at all, actually. But we do have we have quite a few engines. We have a handful of engines. Wow, I misread. We have a handful of questions. Anyways, today we're doing a lot of little stuff. We're doing a lot of prep work and, well, some terrain work as well. I did a lot of prep work. And then I accidentally deleted my footage, which is why this episode is late. Anyways, today we're talking about the Zombie Train Arsenal, which was a question that was asked by Dean back 10 episodes ago. What was your, and by your, I mean the entire train's arsenal, any unique arms? Well, I will preface this by saying that I'm not really a gun guy. I wasn't ever raised around firearms or anything like that, and frankly, I just rolled with whatever I got and whatever felt right. And on top of that, I sort of would go for things with not a lot of kick, because I'm not a guy who weighs a hell of a lot. As for unique arms, I think it's worth pointing out, well, let me go over something real quick first. I personally had at my side almost all the time, and I went through a few of these, as I've mentioned before. A silenced Glock 17. I believe it was a 17. And, as I've said, I lost one of these Glocks in the Cape Cod Canal. I lost another one out while I was on the pass. There I picked up a Smith & Wesson Model 29, which was from the Dufresne brothers, and that went away fairly quickly, actually, because it had way too much kick for me, and I went back to another Glock when I managed to get my hands on one, which is when we got to Portland. And there were a couple of things. If you guys have read the past, you know about Evie. Evie was the switch woman, I guess, is really her name, or really what she would be called, but she ended up with a coach gun, which fit her quite well because it was better for close quarters combat. And it's what amounts to a sawed-off double barrel shotgun. And she had that for a little while. She picked it up in Portland after she was actually shot with it. So that sort of stuck with her for a while, although she was kind of a blade girl because she didn't like the splatter of anything like that. She would get up close and personal and typically didn't want firearms involved. She preferred stealth. This thing was not stealth at all. But, I don't know, it became like a souvenir to her after that. My cousin Christopher, he had some sort of sniper rifle, and it was one of the few explicitly military arms that we had. In the cab, we had mounted an 870, although it wasn't necessarily a military version. I think it was the elite version. It had a wooden, not stock, but it had wooden components. It didn't seem like a sort of militarized firearm. And keep in mind, most of these came from a civilian gun shop that we pillaged, up here around Albany. And it was sort of take what you can get, and I was one of the last ones in, and I just wanted something small, as I've said. One of the other interesting things we had is for a little while, and for a little while, I mean, not a little while, we had them for quite a while. We just didn't typically use them very often because they chewed through ammunition. We had a few M2 Brownings, and these we would normally keep in storage, like I said, and we'd bring them out whenever we had a really massive horde to deal with. While most of the crew supported semi-automatic rifles, and I'll talk about what happened after the Zombie Train Incorporated began, then everybody did. Then we standardized firearms across the entire crew. Everyone had semi-automatic rifles, and we sort of learned early on that automatic rifles are not necessarily the best course of action. Of course, things that are quiet, things that are silenced are absolutely the best because you can be stealthy with them, and zombies hearing, I mean, it's not explicitly better than a human's, but they use it an awful lot. You don't want to be attracting them by making loud noises. They will be attracted to literally any noise whatsoever. Which is good to, distract them, but that's beside the point. And we had 2 or 3 of these, and we'd bring them out, again, they normally stayed in the boxcars, and we'd bring them out and sort of park them, open the doors, and unload. Again, not my area of expertise, not my job either. I would typically be in the cab, if anything. Or, in the war room, which was the first coach back. Although, there were some things in between. As for other arms, like I said, a smattering of semi-automatic rifles. Anything from practically ancient firearms at this point, like M1 Garands, to more modern military arms like M16s. And these would sort of get changed in and out depending on whatever ammunition type we had. We found it pretty prudent to keep a stockpile of weapons, even if we didn't have ammunition for them, because you never know when you're going to come across ammunition for them. And naturally you're going to want to conserve ammunition, but you want to be able to use every bullet you find. Not to say that there were too many situations where you found an awful lot of ammunition without firearms to go with it, but they did happen every once in a while, especially in a personal stockpile, of which we found a few. You could find a lot of rounds, and it would appear as if they were all standardized, but the weapons to go with them were nowhere to be found. And obviously the assumption there was that the owner of said weapons, or owner of said weapon, maybe weapons, had taken them, and some of the ammunition, maybe as much as they could carry, and left the remainder. Or, perhaps they were killed before they could expend all of it. Shotguns were particularly useful, although we didn't have an awful lot of them. And the report on a shotgun, as well as the cycling time and things like that, sort of made them not as good, especially for fighting zombies, oh dear, in large numbers, as you'd expect. They're good at close range, but to incapacitate a zombie, you really have to take the head off. Or you need to damage the brain. And, aiming with a shotgun at close range is easy. Aiming with pretty much anything at close range is easy, unless you have a long-barreled rifle. A sniper rifle of some description. And, but you don't want to be in close range, so you want to pick them off from at range, and therefore having a shotgun, or at least one without slugs, or that doesn't fire in a very compact pattern, wouldn't be particularly useful other than to maim or to injure, in which case the zombie will still come for you. It'll still get there, eventually. But, like I was saying, after the Zombie Train Incorporated began, we ended up with the military lending us a much greater helping hand. They made sure we didn't ever run out of ammunition, and because of that, we were able to discard a lot of the less useful older arms. Even some import Russian firearms. A handful of weapons made it over from when we brought over the whatchamacallit, the refinery parts and the people to go with it, but they weren't put into use. A couple of them, I think, chambered NATO rounds, but we all standardized, and by all I mean anybody that carried around a rifle, which weren't too many people. We just sort of had them posted by the vestibules in all the coaches. They got changed to M16s. And this is just what the military was using because it was easy. NATO is an easy round to get and a fairly easy round to make, and you can make, massive quantities of it. And the M16 is pretty much the go-to, in general, for the U.S. military. Now, out in sort of the wilderness, people again would get whatever they could get their hands on, like I said. And these varied through all sorts of weapons, but I couldn't begin to name them all. I couldn't even begin to name a few of them. I got acquainted with the ones that I used. But other than that, I don't know. I just don't know. I don't even know what kind of rifle Chris used. I only know that it was a very long-barreled sniper rifle. I know that the Stevensons, Oswald and Carolyn, who ran Hank, Flagpole 75, who we found on the pass, they had a Lee Enfield rifle. And they had equipped to it, and this is the, this was unique of theirs. It was sort of a homemade LiDAR scope, and it was a manual sweep, and it would read out projected to a screen in the back. And that was really, really cool. It wasn't particularly useful as an actual scope, but it was a really good way to tell, where anything was. We found later when we built some of these for, other groups / other weapons, again, they didn't function as very good scopes because they weren't high-definition readouts by any means. But they were good at figuring out if something at a distance was a zombie. Because if you had night vision or infrared, specifically infrared, zombies don't have any body heat. So you would be able to look with the IR and see it doesn't look like anything's there, and then look with the LiDAR and see, oh, there's a humanoid figure shambling around over there. There's definitely a zombie because he's not giving off any body heat. Of course, you can sometimes tell by the movements as well, but there's always a chance that you get a particularly coordinated zombie, or the other way around, you think something's a zombie, you check it, it has a infrared signature, and either it's somebody stupidly trying to fool the zombies, which has never worked, or it's a quisling, and those are people that you could say they're brainwashed, but that's not really the right term for it. It's people that have been sort of mentally broken by the infestation and almost believe themselves to be zombies and will act like zombies, not for the purpose of fooling them, but just because they don't know what else to do. It's strange. It was very, very strange. The war did strange things to many people. Anyways. What else do we have for unique arms out there? I'm not, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not hugely versed in this. I can talk about the advantages, disadvantages of different kinds of firearms for fighting the Horde all day long, but for fighting the Hordes, not the Horde, all day long. But this wasn't, it was not even in the slightest my area of expertise. We had a smattering of all sorts of different firearms, and when they all came to bear on something, that was really something. But there was no standardization until the Zombie Train Incorporated happened. We didn't have any large scale firearms, any big guns. And the reason you don't need big guns is because, as I said, automatics don't do crap. For the rate of fire they put out, a handful of those bullets will actually matter. Because zombies can absorb a whole hell of a lot of punishment below the neck, and basically not have any problem with mobility or any problem with their desire to come and kill you, and eat you, and infect you. We also didn't have anything explosive. There's no point to that. Like, even heavy-handed thermobaric weapons won't do very much to a zombie because all of their bodily fluids are coagulated, pretty much. And, if you damage their brain enough with that, that's fine, but it's, in the cranium, it's in the skull, and the blood sort of acts as more of a cushion than it otherwise would have, because it's more like Jell-O at this point. So you have a real hard time injuring a zombie with something like that. So it was very important to us to have essentially carbines, rifles, generally, or more often than not, single shot, semi-automatic, anything. And large clip sizes were useful as well, but beggars can't be choosers, and we were kind of on the run. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you next week. Beta 1.0 is coming out soon, by the way. Train Man out.